Hello, and welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast and day 2 of our 5 days of holiday grief. Today, I wanted to focus on how to cope with the pressure to, quote, be merry, to be in a good mood, to be happy and joyful in a time where we are feeling anything but that, or very, very little bits of that at best. So today we're diving into a topic that is especially challenging this time of year, and it is that pressure to be merry and put on a good front and a brave face and all the things. And the holiday season is often painted as one of, it's the most wonderful time of year, right? It's filled with joy, it's filled with laughter and celebration. But what if instead of feeling joyful, you find yourself struggling just to get through the day, just to brush your teeth, just to take your dog out? If you are listening to this podcast and this episode specifically, you are likely grappling with some grief. And on top of that, the societal pressure to be cheerful when you are just feeling this incredibly heavy burden on your shoulders, and that burden being grief, being a loss that you are struggling with. So today in this little mini-sode, I just want to talk about how to cope with these expectations and how to give yourself permission to honor your feelings even when the world around you is pushing you and pressuring you to do something else. So I invite you to grab a cup of something warm, settle in, or just be careful driving if you're listening to this on a commute or wherever you're at, and let's get into it. So let's just start by acknowledging something that so many of us face, but rarely talk about, and that is the expectation that we need to be cheerful during the holiday season. And normally, we might not realize how inundated with this messaging we are, but think about it. It can be so overwhelming to see people around us seemingly immersed in this holiday cheer. There's decorating, there's holiday gatherings, there's exchanging of the gifts, all the things. Meanwhile, we are just struggling to even find a reason to function every day because we are so overcome with our grief, with sadness, with missing who we've lost, whatever this looks like for you. And grief can make the holiday season feel, well, it can make it feel like a lot of things. But when we are in such a state of maybe fight or flight or fawn or freeze or whatever it is, honestly, it can just feel like a cruel joke. And everyone around you is celebrating. But meanwhile, you feel stuck and you almost feel like you're watching from the outside looking in. I have 1000% been there myself. And society has created this narrative that happiness is mandatory around the holidays. And think about what we're exposed to on a daily basis. We're hit with it when we go into stores, on nearly every website we go on ads, on our phones, people talking about it, commercials. It just does not end. But here's the thing, as I hope you know, there is no timeline and there is certainly no seasonality to grief. It doesn't take a break because it's December, and it certainly doesn't care about holiday music and festive lights or cheerful commercials or whatever it is. If you're in pain, you are in pain, and that's okay. But how do you navigate this pressure when the world or friends or family that are not particularly supportive keep insisting that you need to just be merry and be grateful and all the things? That's what I want to explore today. One of the most important lessons I've learned as a grief coach, but also just as a griever and in my own grieving journey, is the power of permission. When we're grieving, we often feel guilty for not being able to meet the expectations of other people. But here's what I want you to know. It is okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry or to feel numb or out of sorts, to say the least, during the holidays and any other moment on any other day outside of the holidays. You do not have to pretend to be happy if that is not where your heart is. And so here's just a really quick little exercise to help you out. If you can do this right now, great. If you can do it later, even better, that's fine. Take a deep breath. And I want you to take lots of deep breaths during the holidays, okay? Make sure you're checking in with yourself. But if you can do this right now, take a deep breath, and I want you to tell yourself these things. It's okay for me to feel whatever I'm feeling. It's okay that I am not feeling myself right now. And it's okay that this holiday season feels so abnormal and foreign to me. And I acknowledge that I am struggling with that right now. Write this down somewhere if you need to. Put it on your bathroom mirror, or maybe make it the background on your phone. If that feels good to you, give yourself permission to not force cheerfulness. Your grief is valid. It needs to be seen and witnessed, and so are your feelings. The other thing I wanted to mention, and again, I talked about this a little bit last time, so I won't belabor this too much, but boundaries are your best friend when it comes to this expectation of being like merry and joyful and happy. It is so important to remember that you have the right to set boundaries for yourself. This is a season where social obligations can feel endless. Maybe it's your own friend group, maybe it's your family that just insists that you have to show up. Maybe it's your work holiday party. Maybe it's your spouse's holiday party. I mean, the list goes on, right? If attending these events feels overwhelming, or if you are just not up for it, it is perfectly okay to say no. If your cheer level, your cheer-o-meter, right, is at an all-time low right now, it can feel very uncomfortable, especially if people around you just don't understand your grief, or maybe you have to go to a gathering where you don't know people that well and you just don't feel like talking about it, but you also are just not feeling like yourself. There are so many little nuances to all of this. But here's something really important I want you to hear. You don't owe anyone an explanation for taking care of yourself. You do not owe anyone anything. You might feel like you owe your immediate family a little something. Okay, I understand. This is all a balancing act here. But for whatever events or gatherings you can get away with, you can simply say, thank you for the invitation, but I won't be able to make it this year. And what I want to say this time that I didn't say in the last episode is that you don't need to justify it beyond that. And if you do decide to go to a holiday gathering, as I mentioned last time, just have an exit strategy in place. Let someone you trust know that you might leave early, or, drive yourself, or however you need to do it so you can kind of slip out of there if it becomes too much. Because protecting your emotional energy, that is so important now more than ever. And it is an act of self-care. It is not a selfish thing to do. Please, please remember that. Now, I want to touch on creating your own traditions here just for a second. We're going to talk about honoring our loved ones in more detail in a later episode, but just remember this for now. There is no rule book for how you're supposed to do the holidays. I have that in air quotes. There is no rule book on how you are supposed to grieve or how you navigate this time, either by yourself or how you do this with family and friends. You have the freedom to create rituals that bring you peace rather than stress. That's why limiting ourselves is so okay. If that means spending the day in pajamas, binge watching your favorite shows, or maybe you take a long, quiet walk in nature or just around your neighborhood, whatever, that's perfectly okay. The holidays are yours to shape in whatever way supports your healing experience. And I want to acknowledge that there is often a sense of hopelessness that comes with grief. This is probably no surprise to you if you've been there or if you're there right now, especially when it feels like everyone else is surrounded by such joy, right? I encourage you to find small, manageable ways to create moments of comfort for yourself. Now, I want to clarify, that doesn't mean forcing happiness, but rather that more means looking for little pockets of peace, as I like to call them. This could be making a cup of your favorite tea, listening to music that soothes your soul, or maybe reminds you of a happier time or your loved one, or not, if that's too painful to hear, that's okay. Or maybe it's just sitting quietly with a good book, and maybe it's this is what I love to do, you guys. I love to read fiction. I'm a big fiction girl. And I love books that frankly take me somewhere else. I'm a little bit of an escapist, I'm not going to lie. I love books that take place in Europe, usually has a pretty amazing female lead, and that it really inspires me. And that just gives me a little happiness and just a little bit of an escape from reality, a little bit, right? This is all healthy escapes from reality, okay? Like, want to preface that. But sometimes the smallest acts of self-kindness, whatever this looks like for you, can really help you get through a difficult day. And also remember other methods to feel better this holiday season. Maybe that's volunteering. Maybe that's giving back. Remember, like, that self-care and self-compassion, there are little things that we can do within the walls of our own home, for example, but sometimes it is so beautiful and so beneficial to maybe help someone else. Giving back, I would venture to say for most of us, makes us feel really good. So that's just something else to consider. And remember, you don't have to be merry, right, to find moments of comfort. You can grieve and still find small things that nourish your spirit a little bit. So before we close this out, I just want to remind you of something really important that I always need to reiterate. You've probably heard me say this before if you are not a first-time listener. You are not alone in feeling isolated, lonely, and like your holiday season is colder, darker, and emptier than usual. Grief can make you feel all of those things and so much more, especially during a season that is supposed to be about togetherness and happiness and warmth. And we, again, are just having this messaging thrown at us constantly from outside sources and even people from within our own circle. But there are others out there who understand what you are going through, myself included. So if you are struggling, do not hesitate to reach out, whether that is to a therapist, a support group, a trusted friend, myself, this community. It is here for you. Because remember, sometimes just saying, I am not okay, and verbalizing that, maybe even saying it out loud, can be such a release. And you never know what doors might open for you. And that vulnerability and having the courage and the power to say that and own that could be the key to a new perspective shift for you. Maybe a new tradition, a new glimmer of hope, or thinking about your grief differently, if nothing else. And I want to remind you, grief, it is a journey. It is not a destination. And while you might not feel it right now, there will be moments of light again. I assure you of that, even if they are just flickers at first, right? So thank you so much for joining me in this episode today, my friend. Stay tuned for day 3 of our 5 days of holiday grief. I really hope this episode gave you some comfort, perhaps some reassurance during a time that can be incredibly difficult, to say the absolute least. And if you found this episode helpful, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear these words too. And also be sure you are subscribed on whatever platform you listen on, and perhaps consider leaving a review if you love what you're hearing here. So remember, you are allowed to take care of yourself. That is not a selfish thing to do. And you don't have to meet everyone else's expectations of how you should be feeling, right? Be gentle with yourself. And remember that it's okay to just be this holiday season. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains, and on Instagram and TikTok at Life with Grief Podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.